Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back for the fourth and final part of my story, Trephine. The Boy Scouts were loud and gangly and insomniac, and Jolie slept but little, despite her weary limbs. Her shoulders ached and her legs twitched. The boy she asked to watch Randolph was nowhere to be found, though the dog was fine. In the dark of the tent, she began to wonder if she'd imagined the whole exchange, yearned the boy into existence. In the morning they were awake to see dawn burnish the undamaged cornstalks. Darren was mourning quiet, and Jolie checked her packing list twice, 3 times, balancing her strict orderliness with hurried efficiency. The Boy Scouts were beginning to stir as Darren and Jolie lifted packs onto their shoulders. They crunched their way through the gravel parking lot and onto the main road. A patchy fog hovered in the ditches and seamed its way through the scrubby trees and stone walls. They walked single file, with Darren taking the lead. The road lay straight and flat, and the sun burned the air clean, and the heat gathered in their armpits, and sweat dripped down their backs, till Jolie felt as if she was marching into battle, ill-prepared and hopeless. The morning traffic began its crawl, and the hunger raced through her body, swelled in her stomach before being flung out in all directions. Where in the world could they possibly eat? After several hours, they found an old Chevette at the outskirts of a visitor parking lot. It seemed to have no owner, or no immediate prospects of an owner, so Darren applied his knowledge of ignitions to the dusty wires beneath the steering column, and soon they were driving again. Jolie piloted them straight away from Gettysburg. The emptiness was awful, and she missed every McDonald's she'd ever been to in her whole life. The smell of grease, the red and yellow tables, the coffee so hot it was like drinking your own tiny piece of the sun, the whole damn mess. Matthew had refused her McDonald's. He didn't like their fish, he said, or the workers, or the color of their uniforms. That's what she remembered most about him. Not his fists, not being pushed down a flight of stairs, not being locked in a closet as a punishment for forgetting laundry, not the unsavory aggressiveness in the bedroom, or the phantom jealousies, or the routine name-calling, or the sense of self-loathing she underwent each time she swore to leave and reneged. Of all those things, what rankled her most was not being able to eat what she wanted. Bruises faded, but that appetite found her each day, like a dirty finger in a wound. She could never pinpoint for anyone, judge, jury, lawyers, what the final straw had been. Perhaps there had been no final straw, just a long, simmering stew finally reaching a boil. They'd lived near the far edge of the county, and after she was sure he was dead, she got into his truck and drove to town and went to McDonald's. She sat right in the front window, the golden arches looming like a child's drawing of mountains, like a yellow brick road. Several police cruisers pulled into the parking lot. The policemen were in no hurry. They stood next to their cars and chatted, pulled off their hats and wiped their hands across their foreheads, blue nylon uniforms pulsing in the heat of the day, arms slick with sweat. These were the same young men that would respond to her call nearly 2 hours later, after she'd eaten all she could eat and had returned home. All was as she'd left it. Matthew lay in the living room, one arm crooked under his head as if he were merely napping. The rooms of the house were silent and still to the point of airlessness, just like the battlefield, full of ghosts and regret and a weight she couldn't tally. The Chevette rattled and shook every time Darren tried to push it past 60. They drove nearly 3 hours without speaking. Jolie had stopped giving directions, and Darren just drove up and down one mountain after another. Sunlight trumpeted through the windows, followed by long bouts of sobering shadow. Jolie pinched her eyes as the familiar hunger bore her clean, releasing those packed away and unbearable images of her mother's final sick days that arrived so quickly and offered so little time for mourning. After her death, social services arrived to whisk Jolie away to a foster home. She had no problem with her foster family. She could no longer recall their names, but swirled through those months with them, mostly Mocus, frenzied one moment, lethargic the next, spacey and weeping nearly all the time. For her 14th birthday, she'd run away. By 16, she'd met Matthew. By 18, was a convicted murderer. Only a jury sympathetic to the photos of the bruises on her back and shoulders and the litany of Matthew's abuses kept her from being imprisoned far longer. Now, still not 30, the balance of her life lay forward, not backward. But it was a doomed march toward an unattainable copse along a ridge defended by superior forces, led by a general unsure of his approach. Outside, a long and green valley stretched before the car. "Where are we?" she said. "West Virginia," Darren said. "That's too far." "How do you mean?" "You need to let me out," Jolie said. "What do you mean, let you out?" "I can't do it. I can't stay." "Because I robbed a McDonald's?" "Yes." But Darren didn't stop driving, and Jolie didn't say anything as she counted the mile markers. Her maps were useless. Each unknown mile brought her further away from any place she'd ever known. "Stop the car," she said. "I can't do that," he said. "We're in the middle of nowhere." "I feel for you, for the dog, for all of it," Jolie said. "But I need to get out." "Maybe we can try a Wendy's. Be honest, Egg McMuffins aren't worth all this fuss." "It's not about the goddamn Egg McMuffins." Jolie couldn't tell if she was yelling or whispering. The wind roared against the windows. The little car shook and rattled and whined. Randolph stirred at the mention of food, but he only raised his head a bit from his paws, and then resettled. Darren's eyes were drawn and bagged, puffy orbs of exhaustion in the rearview mirror. He braked his way down a long, sloping switchback. Below them, the valley floor was dotted with monopoly-sized houses and shimmering ponds the size of silver dollars. The view was clear, and the valley broken into orderly grids. Jolie wasn't sure of her geography, but perhaps she was looking at the beginnings of the Great Plains. Perhaps they were coming to a long, unmapped prairie. "Take this money," Jolie said. She dug the bank bag from her pack and tossed it onto the front seat. "What do you want me to do with this?" "Either take it and let me out, or drive back," Jolie said. "And do what?" "Return the money." "They'd arrest me." "You don't have to go in. I'll do it. I'll take it in and find the manager and apologize. I'll do it all. I just can't have it here. I can't breathe." Darren pulled over to the shoulder and turned around. West Virginia and the remaining states, uncharted and undiscovered, stirred in Jolie a lonesomeness as simple and sharp as the teeth on the Trephine drill. "What is it?" Darren said. "Just go back. All the way to Gettysburg?" He pointed at what lay beyond the rear window, his long finger connected to all she'd left behind. He need only crook a delicate knuckle to reel her home, to instigate a return. Jolie took his hand with both of hers. She was suffused with an empty and fathomless craving. "Yes," she said, "that way. The sooner you go back, the sooner we can eat." Thanks for listening. More stories coming up.